After graduating high school, I got engaged to my nominal Uncle Robert. But he only ever saw me as a child. That night, back at the new apartment, I trembled as I reached to loosen his tie. He brushed my hand away, though, and chuckled lazily. Do you really think I'm so depraved I'd sleep with my own niece? The next day, citing work, he flew overseas. 2 years later, we ran into each other at an upscale lounge. At that moment, Ethan was confessing his feelings to me in front of everyone. And Robert, holding a glass, leaned casually against the wall, watching the show. That night, I sat nervously in the backseat of the Maybach, his fingers tracing my jaw as he examined me. I raised you myself. How could you possibly run off with someone else? I had only intended to step out of the private room for some air. I never expected to run into Uncle Robert, whom I hadn't seen much of in 2 years, in the hallway. And I certainly didn't expect Ethan to corner me and confess his feelings. I shook my head, flustered. I'm sorry, Ethan, Joanna, is it because I'm 4 years older than you? He cut me off, as if he'd anticipated this. Actually, older guys are better at taking care of someone, like me, for example. Robert stood by the wall, glass in hand, looking relaxed and detached, like he was watching a play. Ethan must have planned this confession for a long time. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone from the booth poured out, surrounding us. Say yes! Say yes! Joanna, Ethan's so handsome and rich. You won't regret it if you say yes. I waited until the cheering died down before I pursed my lips and finished my sentence from before. I'm sorry, I already have a boyfriend. Not far away, Robert half lifted his eyes. Ethan frowned, looking a little impatient. You've been saying you have a boyfriend since freshman year. How come we've never seen him? Call him here now, and I'll believe you. Seriously, Joa? Nah, you always use that excuse to reject people. It's so lame. I felt a little annoyed too and debated with them sullenly. We're getting married this year. Why would I lie about that? Actually, not long after seeing Robert, I'd realized. I was turning 20 soon. He had come back to get married to me. And if nothing unexpected happened, he'd leave again soon after we got the marriage license. Ethan was enraged by the repeated rejections. Getting married? Joanna, are you messing with me? Am I being too nice to you? He pointed at me, his face darkening, about to start yelling again. But his finger was grabbed by a larger hand, then twisted back mercilessly. The boy's sharp cry echoed down the entire hallway. The one who acted was Robert's bodyguard. He kicked the back of Ethan's leg. Unable to stand, the boy fell straight onto his knees in front of me. The manager of the upscale lounge rushed over when he heard the commotion, seemingly ignoring us. He bowed slightly and walked up to Robert, looking distressed. Mr. Robert, what is this? Did this kid upset you? Robert didn't answer. He had just raised the hand holding his glass, and the manager, with keen perception, immediately took it with both hands. Robert looked at me, one eyebrow slightly raised, smiling. Aren't you coming over? The group who had been cheering earlier didn't dare say a word now. They even automatically cleared a path for me. I obediently walked over to Robert, catching the faint scent of alcohol on him. A girl dared to call out to me, her tone cautious. Is this your boyfriend? Robert always treated me like a child. He definitely wouldn't like me saying that on my own. I shook my head, denying it, and introduced him. This is my Uncle Robert. Robert's expression didn't show any change in emotion. He just absent-mindedly rubbed the engagement ring on his left ring finger, the one I had put on him. The manager, unsure of Robert's intentions, was wedding profusely. Mr. Robert, are you no longer angry? Otherwise, I can teach this punk another lesson for you. Robert raised his hand, signaling him to stop. It's not worth it. Then he had someone from the booth bring out his suit jacket. He held it in his hand and asked me, do you want to stay and play a bit longer, or come home with me? The curiosity in the eyes of the people behind me was practically spilling over. I definitely didn't want to stay and be interrogated. I moved a little closer to him, subconsciously seeking a sense of security. Uncle Robert, I want to go home. The driver's unconscious act of raising the partition in the backseat made me feel a bit awkward. The car was so quiet I could even hear the steady sound of the tires on the highway. Robert, next to me, was rubbing his temples with his eyes closed. I curled the hands resting on my knees and mustered the courage to say, "Uncle Robert, are you having a headache?" I can help you massage it." It had been half a year since we last met. My relationship with Robert had returned to the boundary line of unfamiliarity. His low, magnetic voice held a hint of a chuckle, incredibly captivating. "Oh, would that be too much trouble for you? I was dragged here for a welcome party right after getting off the plane. I didn't even have time to tell you I was back." It took me a moment to realize he was explaining himself. "It's okay." I knelt on the seat, straightened up. I reached my hands over, placed them on his temples, and massaged seriously. With Robert's eyes closed, I dared to gaze at his features, taking them in. He was truly handsome. His features weren't excessively delicate or overly sharp. More handsome than anyone else I had ever seen. A car horn broke the silence. The driver slammed on the brakes. I was thrown sideways by the inertia. Just as I thought I was about to fall, a pair of hands caught my waist. I was directly lifted and at sideways on Robert's lap. Subconsciously, I wrapped my arms around his neck. Our eyes met. His ink-black eyes clearly reflected my current bewilderment. At such a close distance, I smelled a heavier scent of alcohol near his collar. Coming back to my senses, I tried to get off his lap. But Robert pressed down on my waist, holding me still. He stared intently at me, and suddenly spoke. "Are you dating?" I looked at him, confused, not understanding why he would ask that. "What?" Robert casually examined my face. Suddenly, he raised a hand and pinched my chin, lifting it up. My breathing involuntarily lightened, too nervous to look at him. Robert was drunk. The oppressive aura he usually kept in check was unleashed. "You've grown up and gotten bolder, Uncle Robert." I clutched the fabric of his shirt at his shoulder, calling him shakily. The man's murmuring voice became fainter and fainter, yet it seemed to hide some unspeakable obsession. "The one I raised. Shouldn't you belong to me?" He lightly curved his lips. "How dare you try to run off with someone else?" I wasn't sure what Robert meant by those words, and I didn't dare think in that direction. After all, in the past 2 years, the time we had spent together added up to maybe less than 3 months. He had even rejected me before. He definitely didn't feel like that about me. But at that moment, he was drunk and only heard what he wanted to hear, refusing to let go. I had no choice but to put aside my confusion for now. Awkwardly, I raised my arms and wrapped them around his shoulders. Enduring the heat rising in my ears, I softly said, "I'm yours. I won't run." Robert lightly kissed my hair as a reward. "Good girl." I called Mrs. Gable ahead of time and asked her to prepare the guest room for Robert. But when he got home, he ignored it and followed me into the master bedroom. The meaning was clear. Actually, this was bound to happen sooner or later. After Robert and I were getting the marriage license in half a month, on my 20th birthday. When I reached for his tie, my heart was pounding so loudly I couldn't help but wonder if Robert could hear it too. In the face of the unknown, I couldn't tell how much anticipation was mixed in. Robert lowered his eyes and looked at me calmly. After a few seconds, just like 2 years ago, he gently brushed my hand away. "You're still scared." I pursed my lips tightly. "I'm sorry, Uncle Robert." But it was also different from 2 years ago. More than fear, it was nervousness. Robert circled my wrist and lifted it. He tilted his head slightly and lightly touched the inside of my wrist with his lips. No need to apologize. That night, I slept nestled in Robert's arms. But my body was still subconsciously tense. Late at night, Robert gently stroked the back of my head. "Do you want to marry me?" I nodded slightly, answering obediently. "Yes, I do." As if to prove my statement, I snuggled closer into his embrace. I thought I probably would have fallen for Robert eventually, even without all this. After all, my ideal type in high school was pretty much exactly like him. Robert and I actually had an arranged childhood engagement. He was 9 years older than me and had never taken the ridiculous betrothal seriously. He told me to call him Uncle Robert. When I was little, during the years Dad was expanding his business overseas, Robert was the one who looked after me. But in my senior year of high school, Dad's company faced bankruptcy. Dad's hair turned white overnight, and he spoke to me with difficulty. "Joe, will you marry Robert as soon as you graduate? We don't have to get the marriage license right away, we can just have the wedding first. Your dad's company needs financial support from the Wynn family." I was very resistant. I didn't want a marriage without love. Besides, at that time, I only saw Robert as my Uncle Robert. But Dad was hospitalized from overwork, working day and night. Sitting by his hospital bed, I finally compromised. However, when Dad went to talk to Robert, he refused without hesitation. The next day, Dad knelt down in front of me as soon as I got home from school, crying heartbreakingly, "Your dad is sorry, Joe. Will you go find your Uncle Charles after you graduate? Robert won't take you. I'm truly at my wit's end. Only your Uncle Charles is willing to help me." That Uncle Charles was 7 years older than my dad, pot-bellied, and nearly bald. Most importantly, he had a wife. Dad was trembling all over from crying, and the bandage on his wrist was even seeping blood. After Robert refused, he couldn't bear the pressure from creditors and had attempted suicide by slitting his wrist once. But he didn't die. So he was trying to force me to my death. I ran to Robert's place, drenched in rain. Robert opened the door and frowned deeply, seeing me soaked through in my school uniform. He pulled me inside. What happened? Tears and rain mixed together, dripping onto the floor. I grabbed his sleeve helplessly, pleading with him, "Uncle Robert, will you marry me?" I didn't want to die myself, and I couldn't just watch Dad die. I could only turn to Robert for help. I knew I shouldn't be such a burden to him. So the moment he agreed, I prepared myself to spend a lifetime repaying what I owed him. The night of the engagement party, we went back to the new apartment he bought. Robert had been caught in round after round of toasting, his steps a little unsteady. I had prepared myself mentally all day, but my hands still couldn't stop trembling when I went to loosen his tie. Robert leaned on the sofa, avoiding my hand. He rested his forehead on one hand, looking at me playfully. "What are you trying to do?" I squeezed my sweaty palms, closed my eyes, and leaned in to kiss him. Robert tilted his head back, avoiding me again. He chuckled softly, as if watching a child throwing a tantrum. "You don't have to do this. Or do you think I'm already so depraved that I would sleep with the niece I raised?" He pushed off the armrest and got up, heading for the guest room. I grabbed his hand, forcing back my helplessness, and looked up at him. "It's okay. After all, we're getting married sooner or later." Robert frowned and scoffed softly. He lightly flicked my forehead, a bit harder than necessary. "What's with the fuss, little girl? Calm down." The dream stopped the moment Robert closed the guest room door. I woke up with blurry eyes. My brain was slow to catch up. I thought, even without this incident, I probably would have fallen for Robert eventually. After all, my ideal type in high school was pretty much exactly like him. The other side of the bed was cold. Robert seemed to have been up for a while. I checked the date on my phone, suddenly remembering my plans for today. I washed up and went to the study to find Robert. "Uncle Robert, I'm going to Sarah's birthday today. We're going to a bar tonight, so I might be back very late." He wore rimless glasses when he worked. They didn't make him look stiff and ascetic. Instead, they made him look like a charming rogue. Robert leaned back in his swivel chair, looking at me casually. "What if someone confesses to you in public again tonight?" His gaze made my cheeks feel warm, and I stammered, "I'll just say I'm getting married soon." After saying that, I closed the door and fled back to my room. Sarah initially said it would just be the four of us from the dorm. But when we got to the bar, there were already 4 guys sitting in the booth. She had tricked us into a mixer using her birthday as an excuse. I stared at Sarah expressionlessly. She clasped her hands together, explaining pitifully, "We couldn't get enough girls for the mixer, and they wouldn't come otherwise. Please, Joe, Just stay with me for a bit. I know you have a boyfriend, and I'll try my best not to let any guy talk to you, okay? Please, please. In fact, she did a great job. She chatted with 2 guys all by herself, completely unfazed. I curled up in the corner of the sofa, playing on my phone, happy to be left alone. Robert happened to send a message. "What time are you done? I'll come pick you up." I hesitated for a second, but decided not to hide it from him. "I want to leave right now, Uncle Robert. Sarah tricked me into coming to a mixer." Then I quickly added, "But I haven't talked to any guys." Just as I sent it, the sofa beside me dipped. It was one of the 2 guys Sarah had been talking to. "It's no fun coming to a bar and not drinking. Try this." He held out a glass with an unknown liquid. I picked up the juice that had been in front of me and took a sip. I politely and distantly refused. "Sorry, my boyfriend doesn't let me drink." "This is fine for me." His gaze followed the juice in my hand. Seeing me swallow, he raised an eyebrow slightly. "Is that the rumored boyfriend again?" He chuckled. "Everyone in our department is talking about it. The campus beauty's boyfriend never shows up, never comes to school to see her, but she's so head over heels for him she turns down countless guys." I gave a perfunctory smile and didn't respond. He didn't try to make conversation anymore, just sat beside me, slowly drinking his own drink. Robert didn't reply to my message. Maybe he was angry. I suddenly felt a little restless. I didn't know if it was because the guy next to me hadn't taken the hint to leave, or because of Robert's silence. A fire in my heart burned hotter and hotter without realizing it. I felt agitated and wanted to go outside for some air. Seeing this, the guy didn't seem surprised, tilting his head with a smile. "You look like you need to rest a bit." My consciousness was sinking. I couldn't quite hear what he was saying, only that I desperately wanted to quench this restlessness. He hooked his arm around my shoulder and told the others, "I'm taking her out for some air, she seems a little drunk." Sarah waved her hand. "Okay, make sure you take good care of her." I was half dragged, half supported by the guy as I stood up from the booth. The person next to me was suddenly kicked in the chest. I lost my support and fell forward. Unexpectedly, I was caught in a familiar but somewhat cold embrace. The restlessness in my body was temporarily soothed. "Boss, there was something in the juice. How should we handle it?" I was scooped up and carried horizontally. A slow, deliberate sentence of judgment came from above my head. "Break his right hand and toss him out near the police station." I buried my face in the man's neck, the sounds of begging fading behind me. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I won't ever dare again." "Stay away." The cold air conditioning in the car pulled back a little bit of my consciousness. I realized I was sitting sideways on Robert's lap. "Uncle Robert, I feel so uncomfortable." I hugged him tightly, feeling like crying. He gently patted my back, the gesture heavily reassuring. "I'm taking you to the hospital now. Just bear with it a little longer." The skin on the side of the man's neck, cool and faintly smelling of sandalwood, was like a silent seduction. Like someone with skin hunger, I couldn't help but lightly bite that spot of skin. Robert's body stiffened abruptly. "Not the hospital." I carefully kissed the side of his neck again, softly saying words that would usually make my face burn bright red just hearing them. "I want Uncle Robert." Robert's hand on my back gradually grew warmer without him realizing it. He looked up and glanced at the driver through the rearview mirror. The driver immediately understood and raised the partition. Robert held me slightly away from him. He seemed both angry and helpless, smiling as he flicked my forehead. "Why are you trying to provoke me now? Trying to force me to take advantage?" He forcefully pressed on my waist, pushing me closer to him, making me feel clearly that he wasn't unaffected. "Joanna, if I'm going to do it, I want you to be willing." Perhaps it was the effect of the drug, I couldn't control my emotions well. A little bit of grievance was magnified tenfold at that moment. Tears welled up in my eyes. I hugged his neck and met his gaze, tears streaming down my cheeks. "How can I make you believe that I like you?" Robert stared unblinkingly, his dark eyes hiding a bottomless undercurrent. In reality, his composure was being slowly eroded. I dared to lightly touch his thin lips, then pulled back. Unlike my shyness, Robert kept his eyes lowered, watching my every move, like a detached observer. But when I took his hand, the scorching temperature of his fingertips couldn't lie. I placed his hand on me, as if sharing a surprising secret. Uncle Robert, I've grown up. I wasn't talking about my age. After a long moment, Robert finally spoke. But his words were directed at the driver. His voice was hoarse with barely concealed desire. Turn around, go home. This was the third time I had taken the initiative. Robert didn't refuse me this time. The second time was last year. After Robert flew overseas, Eleanor came to see me once. She subtly suggested I visit Robert in Houston more often when I had time, and cultivate our relationship. I nodded repeatedly in agreement. Out of shame, I couldn't refuse any request from the Wen family. In the past 2 years, I had flown to see Robert quite a few times. Occasionally, he would come back, like for my birthday. I always felt a bit awkward and unsure how to act around him. That time, I didn't tell him in advance that I was coming. When I arrived at the airport, his assistant was there to pick me up. Miss Joanna, the boss is still entertaining clients and can't leave right now. I'll take you CK to the villa first. I nodded quietly. My phone screen was still on the latest news push notification. Top rising star spotted overseas with rich second-gen boyfriend, marriage into wealthy family just around the corner? The post included several photos of the two kissing outside a club, with the man's face blurred out. But his build and clothing style were very similar to Robert's. Most importantly, the car in the corner of the last photo had an unblurred license plate. It was Robert's car. I rested my chin on my hand, staring out the window in a daze. A faint sense of loss lingered in my heart. But what right did I have to question him? I already owed him. Mrs. Gable had gone home, and I was the only one in the large villa. I opened my suitcase to organize my clothes, already prepared for Robert not coming home tonight. Close to midnight, the villa suddenly lost power. The only light source was the street lamp outside the window. The silence was mixed with a touch of eeriness. Hugging my knees, I sat in the corner of the sofa and called Robert's assistant for help. The villa's power is out. Is there a backup generator? The generator was broken the day before yesterday and hasn't been repaired yet. She softened her tone, reassuring me, please don't worry, I'll bring someone over to check the circuit now. Just before my phone battery died, there was a rustling sound at the front door. I didn't have time to put on slippers, so I ran to the door barefoot, heart pounding, and opened the electronic display for the intercom. The next second, the door was pushed open. It was Robert, back home. I stared at him blankly. Uncle Robert? Along with the surprise, the unease that had just risen in me instantly disappeared. He didn't even take off his coat before picking me up. He chuckled softly, a hint of amusement in his voice. Haven't seen you for long, and you've already forgotten everything I said. How many times have I told you not to go barefoot? It sounded less like a reprimand and more like indulgence. Robert placed me on the sofa. He half knelt in front of me, holding my feet as if transferring warmth. Why didn't you call me when the power went out? I rested my hands on the sides of my legs, subconsciously picking at the edge of the sofa. I turned my head away from him. I didn't want to bother you and your girlfriend. What? Robert paused for a second, a low chuckle escaping his throat. He tapped the coffee table beside him with his knuckles. He looked at me leisurely. My girlfriend isn't you? Of course not. I was just a little burden who used marriage to tie him down. This dramatic thought, I only dared to mutter to myself. I opened the news article and silently handed my phone to him. He glanced at it and explained, that's Daniel Hahn and his girlfriend. We were in the same booth discussing a partnership tonight. Daniel Hahn was the second son of the Hahn family. He was now working as a vice president under Robert. So that's what it was. Robert held my foot, not too tightly, and asked with a smile, don't you believe me? I blinked, still not looking at him. No, I do. Suppressing the smile that was starting to surface from the joy, I pulled my foot out of his hand. Slipping on the slippers, I ran back to the bedroom in one go. I'm going to bed. I wrapped myself haphazardly in the blanket, letting myself happily roll around. The assistant and his team quickly fixed the circuit. Power was restored inside. The faint sound of water from the bathroom outside stopped abruptly at one point. My hands couldn't help but grip the blanket tighter. After a long while, I made up my mind and threw off the blanket. I walked to Robert's bedroom door and knocked. He opened the door halfway, strands of damp black hair scattered across his forehead. The top button of his black silk pajamas was undone, revealing one side of his collarbone. He looked just like a playful, uninhibited young master. What's wrong? He smiled, planning to check up on me before bed. I choked up, looking up at him to accuse him. Uncle Robert, I already know it was a misunderstanding. Can you please stop bringing it up? I tried to avoid calling him by that title again, but if I didn't constantly remind myself, I would still blurt out Uncle Robert. Luckily, Robert didn't seem to care what I called him. He just asked, "So, what did you need?" I lowered my head, not daring to look at him anymore. I felt like a freshly steamed dumpling. Steam seemed to be rising in wavy lines from the top of my head. I swallowed hard and mumbled, I want to sleep with you." It felt like ages before Robert opened the door wider, stepping aside to let me in. I hurried to the edge of the bed with my head down and dove under the blanket. I was surrounded by Robert's familiar slightly bitter but clean scent. Robert got a bottle of water and placed it on the nightstand before turning off the light and lying down on the other side. His breathing quickly deepened, as if he had fallen asleep. I tentatively scooted closer to him. No reaction. I slowly wriggled into his arms, and Robert still didn't move. After steeling myself for a full minute, I lifted my sweaty palm to undo his pajama button. My hand was suddenly grabbed. Robert didn't open his eyes, dragging out his words lazily. "Looking for a spanking? Can't even sleep properly." It felt like I had used up all the courage in my life for this moment. I bit my lip and continued trying to undo his button. Robert's patience ran out, and he rolled over on top of me, completely trapping me. "Nose to nose," he asked in a hoarse voice, "what are you trying to do?" My hands were pinned against my chest, unable to move. I looked at him, confused, and whispered, "You don't have any other girlfriends. Then why don't you want me?" The man's throat above me bobbed. "Aft. A moment," he said in a low voice, "you're still too young. I'm already 19. I looked at him intensely. "Robert, stop treating me like a child." This was the first time I had called him by his name. He still didn't seem to want to let go of me. My eyes couldn't help but sting. I couldn't tell if it was because he was annoying me or because I felt embarrassed. Robert lowered his head and lightly kissed my eyelids. "Crying just like that, aren't you a child?" He negotiated with me, a hint of a smile in his eyes. "Can we wait a little longer? I've been working nonstop for 30 hours, I really can't tonight." I swallowed my tears, suddenly feeling a little sorry for him. "I'm sorry. Then you should get some sleep." Robert was afraid I wouldn't behave, so he held my hand and held me in his arms all night. After we got married, we talked about that night one day. Robert told me the truth, unhurriedly. Saying I was too young was just an excuse to put me off. He could see that I didn't feel much love for him at that time and was more trying to offer myself as repayment, so he didn't want to force it. "Turn around, no hospital." Robert told the driver, "Go back to Harbor View." The new apartment Robert bought was at Harbor View Residence. It was where I had lived for 2 years. But the drug's effect was gradually overwhelming my reason, and my patience was wearing thin. My whole body was screaming that I wanted Robert. He held me tightly, reassuring me softly that we would be there soon. Even though the driver was fast enough, I couldn't help but try to bite Robert's lips in the elevator. Robert's self-control seemed to have reached its limit as well. As soon as we entered the apartment, he put me down on the entryway cabinet and kissed me, prying open my lips. Both of our breaths were ragged. Robert didn't let go until my lips felt slightly numb. Kissing seemed to temporarily relieve the effects of the drug. At least when Robert Carried me into the bedroom. I was a little more clear-headed. I stayed obediently in his arms, quiet and still. Robert looked down, a hint of tenderness in his smile. Not scared anymore? He made me feel a flicker of panic. Just a little. I asked him for reassurance. Will it hurt, Uncle Robert? I'm scared of pain. He didn't answer, only told me to let him know if I felt uncomfortable. Perhaps it was the effect of the drug, it wasn't as uncomfortable as I had imagined. Later, when Robert intentionally slowed things down, I was even able to think with my remaining bit of reason. He looked down at me and suddenly chuckled softly. Why are you looking at me like that? What do you want to say? I opened my mouth, then closed it again. After hesitating for a moment, I couldn't help but ask softly. Before, did you ever? I bit my lip, trying to find a suitable word I could say. Robert already understood what I meant. No, I haven't. The hand I had on his arm couldn't help but tighten. Why? After all, he was about to turn 29. Men at this age seem to automatically trigger the comforting skill. He leaned in to kiss me before giving his answer. Waiting for you to grow up. Robert planned to shift his focus back to the domestic company this time. So lately, he was always busy and would stay at the office all day. The next morning, I woke up groggy, my eyes still heavy with sleep, when Robert was already washed up. He sat down by my bed, looking down as he buttoned his cuffs. You're up so early? I yawned and sat up, leaning bonelessly against his shoulder. Uncle Robert, are you going to the office? Can I come with you? Robert's lips brushed against my ear, his voice as gentle as a lover's whisper. What's wrong? I wrapped my arms around his waist and snuggled into his embrace. My voice was stickier than melted marshmallows. I don't want to be apart from you. He held me closer, chuckling softly. Why are you so clingy, baby? I didn't think I was that clingy. I just ran into the kitchen while brushing my teeth to lean against him as he made breakfast. On the way to the office, I leaned on his shoulder and stretched out his hand to compare sizes with mine. That was all. Not long after Robert brought me into the office, he had to go into a meeting that would last no less than 3 hours. I swung his hand and let out a frustrated "Ah. I won't see you for so long." After saying that, I stood on tiptoe and kissed his cheek several times. Then I'll just get some extra kisses now. Robert's breath hitched. He put his hand on my waist and lifted me to sit on his desk. I've raised you this long, and I didn't even know you were so good at acting sweet. My legs, dangling in the air, swung back and forth. I turned my head and leaned in. Then Uncle Robert, you kiss me too. He pinched my chin with 2 fingers, turning my face back to him. Robert lowered his head, and just before his lips met mine, the office door was pushed open. Mr. Wen, it's time for the meeting. It was Catherine Zhang, Robert's chief secretary in the domestic company. She spoke calmly, her eyes slightly lowered. She was the only employee I knew at this company. Arthur Wen had mentioned her name many times, and he even invited her to eat at the Wen family home occasionally during holidays. He praised Catherine Zhang as the most promising among the scholarship students he sponsored. She joined Robert's company right after college graduation and rose to her current position in just 3 years. I flinched when the door was suddenly pushed open. Robert missed the kiss. He had his back to her and showed no reaction. After a moment, he lifted me off the desk. He flicked my cheek with his knuckle. I've arranged for someone to look after you. Just ask them if you need anything. If, Mr. Wen. Catherine Zhang interrupted him again, please prioritize the important matter. As first, I will see to Miss Joanna's arrangements. As soon as she finished speaking, Robert suddenly swept the pen holder off his desk. Several pens rolled to Catherine Zhang's feet. He rarely got angry. At this moment, he leaned back against his desk, smiling as he looked at Catherine Zhang. Are you finished? The air froze. Catherine Zhang's lips were pale and tight as she squatted down to pick up the pens one by one. I'm sorry, Mr. Wen. I was just worried about missing the meeting time. Robert was also playing with a pen in his hand. As Catherine Zhang walked over and squatted down to pick up the others, he casually dropped the pen in his hand in front of her. He reminded her from above, "You seem to be overstepping your bounds." Miss Jing. This address, Miss Jing, successfully made Catherine Jing clench the pen until her knuckles turned white. The light, casual tone held a sarcasm that only those in the know could understand. When I went to the Wen family home for Arthur Wen's birthday in my sophomore year of high school, Catherine Jing was there too, standing next to Arthur Wen. She was wearing a well-fitted formal dress, looking exceptionally beautiful. Arthur Wen had a classmate from out of town who casually joked, "Is this Robert and his girlfriend? They match so well in both looks and temperament. Which corporate heiress is she?" Catherine Jing's smile had frozen by the time she heard the last sentence. Arthur Wen explained Catherine Jing's identity. The classmate's gaze towards her became meaningful. By calling her Miss Jing now, Robert was also subtly reminding her of her secretary status. Catherine Jing remained in a squatting position, her expression hidden. "I understand I was wrong, Mr. Wen." Robert silently squeezed my hand, stepped past Catherine Jing, and left the office. I was alone in the office, propping up a tablet to watch a drama. I had originally wanted to walk around each floor into Arwen Corporation, but I worried about bothering someone to show me around. So I just slumped in Robert's boss chair, watching the drama listlessly. I don't know how long passed. I didn't wait for Robert to come back. Catherine Jing came in first to lay her cards on the table. She glanced at my tablet screen and laughed angrily. "So, all this time, you've been watching this kind of brainless stuff?" I instantly sat up straight. I didn't quite understand what she meant by brainless. I tried to defend myself. I occasionally watch educational movies, TV shows, and anime too. Catherine Jing gave a self-mocking smile. When I was 20, the only videos I watched to keep up with Mr. Robert were online classes. My eyes widened, not entirely sure what she meant. Catherine Jing admitted it frankly. "I like Mr. Robert, can't you tell?" Her eyes dimmed. "I know no matter how hard I try, I'll never be qualified to stand beside him. His wife will definitely be a wealthy socialite who's excellent in every way. It won't be me." My gaze became a mix of emotions. Before I could feel too sympathetic, Catherine Jing's tone shifted, and she said coldly to me, "But you don't deserve him either. In my opinion, you're just a little good for nothing. You're the least qualified person to marry him." I was speechless. Qualified? What qualification? I mumbled, complaining, "Do I need to get my assets checked before marrying Robert? If so, I really was the least qualified. After all, I had already cut ties with Dad and them. When I got engaged to Robert, I only had $17 left in my WeChat wallet." Catherine Jing's face turned pale and then flushed. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Footsteps approached. Robert pushed the door open and entered, his gaze coolly passing over Catherine Jing. "Mr. Wen." Robert went to the window and opened it a crack. Then he sat on the sofa, legs casually crossed. He took out a cigarette and lit it. I blinked, a little surprised. I knew he had a slight smoking habit, but he rarely smoked in front of me. Robert stared intently at Catherine Jing. As always, his tone was slow and deliberate. "Go write a resignation letter and submit it. You can start handing over your work." The woman in front of him bit her lower lip until it turned white. "What did I do wrong? Are you going to be so blinded by infatuation just to protect her?" I rested my arms flat on the desk, leaning my chin on them. After listening to Catherine Jing, I turned my eyes to look at Robert. He crushed the remaining half of the cigarette between his fingers, non-committal. He just said in a calm tone, "Get out." Catherine Jing knew Robert well enough. His patience with her had reached its breaking point. If she argued further, Robert would probably have someone drag her out. During the few seconds of stalemate, a tear dropped from Catherine Jing's eye onto the floor. In the silent office, the sound was exceptionally clear. "I understand," Catherine Jing said softly and turned her back to leave. The woman's figure was thin but stood as straight as always. I sighed softly to myself, but didn't feel sorry for her. Catherine Jing was resigning voluntarily. With her abilities, she could easily find a job at a company no worse than One Corporation. I hugged my phone and continued editing my resume. Robert came over to my side, resting one hand on the desk, and glanced at my screen. Planning to find a summer internship? Yep. I looked up at him. I don't think Catherine Jing was completely wrong. I can improve myself and get some experience. Robert picked me up and sat in the chair himself. He let me sit on his lap and listened as I analyzed. I rely on you too much. If we break up or get divorced in the future, what would I do, being so useless? Robert slowly looked up. Little niece, could you repeat what you just said? His hand, resting on my waist, gradually moved upwards. I suddenly sensed danger. No. I pushed his hand away. I just said if. Robert looked at me coldly, not stopping. I couldn't help but let out a whimper. Uncle Robert, no. I'm sorry. I won't say it again. Robert's expression softened. His aura became gentle again. He lowered his eyes and smoothed the wrinkles on my clothes, threatening me gently, there won't be a next time. I was annoyed and lowered my head to bite his throat to vent my frustration. Robert acted as if it didn't hurt at all, resting his hand on the back of my head and rubbing it. Oh, this man was so old his organs were failing and he couldn't feel pain anymore. Robert said that interning at one corporation would also build experience. I thought about it and nodded in agreement, completely ignoring the slight, ambiguous smile that had appeared on his lips. The next day, I was assigned to work under one of Robert's female assistants. The two of us looked at each other, and she chuckled. Are you hungry? Huh? I can take you to get something to eat. I tilted my head, a question mark over it. Thanks, but I just ate 2 pastries. As I spoke, I immediately reacted and started rummaging through my backpack. I think I have one more. Do you want it? No need. She quickly waved her hands, smiling as if her life was terribly hard. After 3 days of work, I was discouraged. Robert's theory was completely wrong. They only gave me easy, mindless tasks. For example, on the second day, I only printed 2 documents all day. I didn't learn anything useful and didn't feel like I was contributing. After a week, I finally couldn't stand it anymore. My resentment towards Robert reached its peak. I was even prepared for a week of Cold War. But the chief assistant said Robert had been in back-to-back meetings all day and hadn't even eaten lunch. I froze for a few seconds. Then I realized that when he came home the past few days, there had been a tiredness in his eyes he couldn't hide. The Cold War ended before it even started, unilaterally declared by me. I softened, lacking backbone. Getting off work in the evening, Robert sent me a message telling me to go home, just like the previous days. I scrolled through Weibo at my cubicle for nearly an hour, then wandered around floor by floor. Not many people were left working late in the entire building, and most of them would leave by 7:30 p.m. after dinner. But Robert had been getting home around 10 p.m. these past few days. I went back to the top floor, carrying my backpack, and went straight into Robert's office. The computer's pale blue light reflected off the man's rimless glasses. When he was focused on work, he often exuded an unapproachable coldness. Hearing the sound, he looked up. A warm temperature surfaced in his eyes. Why didn't you go home? I took a snack bar out of my bag, tore off the wrapper, and put it in his mouth. I complained, not entirely happy, you haven't eaten all day, aren't you hungry? I wanted to say, didn't you know to ask your assistant to buy you something to eat? Don't you know this will cause stomach problems? But thinking that he was still working late, I didn't dare to bother him any further. I lowered my head and kissed his cheek, saying in a muffled voice, I wanted to wait for my boyfriend to go home together tonight. You keep working. I'll entertain myself on the sofa, you don't need to mind me. After saying that, I turned to walk towards the sofa lounge area. Robert got up and pulled me back. He pinned me against the edge of the desk and leaned down. 1 minute, he said in a low voice. A kiss without foreplay swept away my breath. Around 9:40 p.m., only the 2 of us were left in the entire building. Robert finished his overtime work. But he didn't seem to be in a hurry to leave and go home. He hadn't even taken off his glasses, and his shirt sleeves were still rolled up to his forearms. One hand in his pocket, he walked leisurely. Are you hungry? I shook my head. I ate in the afternoon. You haven't eaten anything, you must be hungry. Let's hurry home and eat. Robert pulled me between his legs. No rush. Huh? I was confused. Robert's hand brushed against my cheek, sliding down to my collarbone, stroking lightly and then more firmly. It was a very provocative action. My breathing easily became ragged. Uncle Robert. He hummed in response, then suddenly turned my shoulders. He made me face the floor-to-ceiling window. I wasn't quite sure what he meant. Not eating, but wanting to look at the night view first. Until Robert's hands started becoming restless. I was startled and trembled all over. This is the office. Besides, aren't you hungry? I struggled desperately, but couldn't even budge Robert an inch. Yes, I'm hungry. The man's chin rested on my shoulder, and he chuckled as he lightly bit my ear. What do you want me to do, little niece? He asked rhetorically, looking utterly proper. Should I eat you? I had seen similar lines in short dramas recently. I'm going to devour you tonight. Things like that. But the eating in those lines referred to a specific activity, whereas Robert's eating was literal, with his mouth. A security guard came up to check once during this time. I covered my mouth with both hands. He called through the door, Mr. Wen, are you still working late? Yes. After dismissing the security guard, Robert's deep gaze locked onto me. Why are you nervous? The office is soundproof. Even though he said that, I wasn't reassured. I didn't take my hands down until the very last moment. The temperature in the office gradually cooled back to normal. My legs were so weak I felt like I would collapse with every step. Robert quickly put his arm around my waist and carried me horizontally out of the office. I shivered, huddled in his arms. Robert, you're a pervert. I'm breaking up with you. Robert glanced at the elevator camera and suddenly said, the elevator could be pretty exciting too. I gave in, acting sweet and clinging to his shoulder. Uncle Robert, I was wrong. I tried my usual trick, planning to bite his neck to vent. But looking up, I noticed the fatigue in his eyes had disappeared sometime during the last hour. My opened mouth closed again. Robert had already reached the parking garage. He put me in the passenger seat before asking, why aren't you biting? Robert sounded amused, afraid I'll do it in the car for the second time? When Robert fell in love, it was like he became a completely different person. He even started saying suggestive things. I couldn't stay angry. After holding back for a long time, all I could do was accuse him. You can't just take advantage of me liking you and being soft on you and keep bullying me like this. No second time today. I furrowed my brows seriously and said softly, eating something is the most important thing right now. Let's go home. I can bake you a cake. Robert listened to me quietly. After a long moment, he smiled. He leaned over, and while helping me buckle my seatbelt, he lightly pecked my lips. Little girl, you need to be careful what you say from now on. I didn't curse or say anything suggestive. His lips brushed against mine, his voice slightly hoarse. You're always so direct. I can't handle you teasing me like this. Robert had zero self-control. Falling in love too late in life really did cause a string of side effects. I celebrated my 20th birthday at the Wen family home. Mr. and Mrs. Wen hinted that we should get the marriage license and have the wedding. Robert, however, wasn't in a hurry anymore. Seeing me hesitate for a few seconds, he misunderstood and thought I wasn't ready. He made an excuse for me and deflected the topic. He said he didn't want to tie me down. Why? Marriage so early and that we could continue dating first. I didn't answer immediately because I wanted to buy a pair of wedding rings with my own money. But I didn't have enough money yet. After interning at one corporation for a week, I found a different job. And when I wasn't busy, I also took on online tutoring as a side job. A few days before school started, I used the money I had saved up to buy the pair of wedding rings I had seen 2 months ago. They didn't have diamonds, but the design was quite appealing. The last Sunday before school started, the Perseid meteor shower was reported to reach its peak. I dragged Robert to a hilltop to wait for it to gather. Around midnight, the meteor shower arrived. Robert leaned against the car, joking, "Are you going to make a wish?" I nodded vigorously twice. I clasped my hands together and closed my eyes devoutly. "My only wish right now is," I suddenly turned around to face Robert. Smiling with my eyes curved, I added loudly, "that Robert accepts my proposal." He stood still, looking at me intently. I took the ring box out of my pocket. Suddenly, my mind flashed back to the night 2 years ago when I begged him to marry me. After Robert agreed, he didn't let me go home again. He had his assistant call Dad and inform him that he agreed to extend a helping hand to the Schur family. The condition was that once I married him, I would be completely his person, have no further connection with the Schur family, and they were not allowed to contact me again. That night, I slept in the guest room next to Robert's room. In the early hours of the morning, I was startled awake by a nightmare. I dreamt that Uncle Charles dragged me into a room by force. I sat up, hugging the blanket, and cried. Robert had just finished working in the study and hadn't slept yet. He heard the sound as he passed by and knocked before coming in. I told him about the dream, my words broken by sobs. "Uncle Robert, I'm so scared. From now on, I won't have a dad, I'll be all alone. He'll definitely easily find out which school I go to. Then he'll find me and harass me." Robert patiently wiped away my tears. When he ran out of tissues, he just grabbed the tie from his collar and used it to wipe my eyes. "Joe, what you're worried about will never happen. You're not alone. Robert will always be your backup. I agreed to marry you, not as a temporary solution to appease your father." His gentle voice gradually calmed me down. "I'm taking on your entire life, so you can do anything you want." Robert smiled, his fingertip gently tracing my swollen eyes. "When you were little, I kept you by my side for 5 years. For those 5 years, I raised you like a princess. How could I possibly let you suffer now?" My first proposal was a plea born out of desperation. This was the second time. Since I was too embarrassed to do it empty-handed again, I saved up money and bought a pair of wedding rings. The sky above was covered by the meteor shower, symbolizing hope and expectation. Robert seemed to finally regain his ability to move. He walked closer, looking down at the ring box. His expression was unreadable. He asked, "Have you thought it through? Joanna, you're only 20. Aren't you afraid of what might happen later if—" "No, I'm not afraid." Robert was being deliberately slow, not reaching out. I directly lifted his hand, took off the engagement ring for him, and put on the wedding ring. I said slowly, "How could getting married be the same no matter who it's with? I don't have pre-wedding jitters, and I don't think marriage is a constraint. It's all just because the person I'm marrying is you." I admired the man's well-defined, long fingers. With the ring on, even a plain band looked exquisite. A smile bloomed on Robert's lips as he looked at the ring. "What's this? Does this mean you're asking to marry me?" I placed the other ring in his palm. Yeah, hurry up and say yes." Robert's eyes sparkled with laughter. He slipped the ring onto my ring finger. His voice was softer than I had ever heard it. "All right, I'll marry you." I was held in Robert's arms, continuing to watch the meteor shower. After a while, a meteor streaked across the sky above us. Before disappearing into the nebula, it flashed with brilliant, dazzling light. As if saying to me, "Hey, I helped you make your wish come true." The end.